they backfilled them. Backfill means they filled them in with dirt, concrete, whatever they could find. That's our drainage system going to the Sandy Center. Okay? That's what they've done. They've backfilled it and filled it in. Okay? Go next. Is this what you want your kids and grandkids playing by? This is in Glen Nebraska Park. This was 10 feet from a house. Okay? Is that really what you want your kids and grandkids playing by? That's all I've got to say. All I can say is vote yes, Proposition A, Proposition B.
As Julie said, I'm Jeff Vogler. This is Taylor Reed. We're with Vogler Spencer Engineering. We've been the district engineer since January of this year. One of the first tasks that we were assigned with was to prepare an engineering report for the bond authorization election. The goal was to come up with an amount that, a recommended amount of bonds to be included in the election that would be adequate to serve both the immediate needs and the future needs of the district. We based that, the number we came up with, which is the 25 million, is based on site visits, projects we knew would be coming up in years to come in the district, as well as historical data that we've accumulated from other districts, your size, your age, just things that we know will be happening in the next 10, 15, beyond number of years, and have those funds available in authorized bonds. Subsequent to that report, the MUD also asked us to put together a comprehensive 10-year CIP, capital improvements plan, that Taylor's now going to discuss.
All right, Julie, if you don't mind, since it's a little small up there, can you go to the actual bond authorization breakdown that I did? Maybe a little easier for people to see the actual numbers and the projects. There we go. So this is a proposed, what a proposed 2022 to 2025 bond application would look like under the projects. Starting off, you have wastewater treatment facility rehab, phase 1. This is more of an exploratory, cleaning the plant, rehabbing any major damages we find, assessing certain items, and then coming back with a phase 2 subsequently in a following year to repair any of the major damages, as well as bring what I would call the plant up to a current state of operations. Currently it operates with the electrical system that it has out there in an open, non-confined area, available to the weather and inclement sorts of damages, and has come quite damaged. Water plant number 1, evaluation and demolition. This is the 70,000 gallon GST beyond the CIA building, I believe it is. This was to evaluate and ultimately demolish it. Your district has plenty of redundancy capacity in water well number 4, the new one that was put in, and water plant number 3. Electrical upgrades at water plant number 3, as Julie noted, you saw the building out there that was in disrepair. This has allowed inclement weather into that electrical equipment and is causing some issues. Water plant number 2, recoating. This happens over time. Water plants start to fade, the coating deteriorates, and you start getting damage to the actual metals. Fire hydrant and valve surveys. Those are to evaluate and make sure that all the water valves turn off. If you've got a main break in the system and you want to be able to turn off a valve, you want to make sure that that valve works. Otherwise, the district loses a lot of water. Homes can't get stopped, and the repair can't get fixed in a timely manner, which damages homes' ability to get their water back. Sanitary clean and televised, as you saw from the manholes. The entire system needs to be cleaned and televised to know any major damages. In a district of your size, for most of our districts, we've already gone through and rehabbed all of the sanitary lines. Truss pipe is what's in the ground, was used 50, 60 years ago. A lot of it has damaged, cracked, sunk, all sorts of things. Houston's known for its swelling soils, causing all kinds of damage to this underground piping. Subsequently, in the next items would be rehabilitation. This is the evaluation from the sanitary clean and televise, and then just doing it in a phased manner. These projects amounts, you don't want to do it all in one chunk. It's a big contract. You want to make sure that you get equal bids from all sorts of contractors to get the best price possible. You have channel survey and evaluation. This is to evaluate Plantation Creek and also Mosswood Creek to a full extent to figure out all the damage. I have walked both those creeks and they are definitely in need of repair. Storm sewer rehab, we would do the same clean and televise for the storm sewer as we would for the sanitary sewer. CGMP, which is corrugated metal pipe, is in the ground currently. As you see from the sinkholes and sinkholes around the district, once it starts to corrode, it is now subject to air getting in the pipe and rust and water eat metal. Currently, the situation is that they have been repaired using the Band-Aid method that doesn't fix the overall structure. And then the Mosswood ditch and subsequently, go to the next bond application. The following bond application for 26 to 27 would be lift station number 3. This is actually a lift station that exists in the back of somebody's yard. There's a manhole with pumps in it. It needs to be removed from the backyard for easy access by the operator. Also so it's not a hazard for the homeowner, and repiped appropriately. That's why it's $150,000, because you'd be putting in a new small lift station. Lift station number 1, just minor rehabs there. Getting the electrical equipment outside of the floodplain would be a critical item to do. Water plant number 2, electrical upgrades. Water plant number 3, recoding. And then continuing on with the phases of the sanitary manhole rehab and Plantation Creek channel rehab based on what we evaluate in the channel survey. The next bond application is very similar to this. Overall, these 10-year projects are associated with a scale rating on how important we deem just based off of our site visits. All of these projects are important. All of them could be the #1 project in any given older district that I use. But obviously, sanitary is a critical item for y'all's district. I have discussed all of these projects with Richard. We sat down and went through all the cost estimates, breakdown. A couple of items he thought I was a little light on them. But we used the experience of our firm and projects of the same size to evaluate the cost estimates. These numbers that I've used in the cost estimates to piecemeal it together is all based off of standard bid prices that we get on a daily basis. We keep a running bid tab in the office that shows all these prices per linear foot, and that's how these numbers will come to. So, that's next.
All right, good evening to you all. I'm Lauren Morales with RBC Capital Markets. Thanks for having me this evening. I wanted to start with the schedule that we prepared for the entire $25 million. I was speaking with Director Smith on the phone this morning, and last week he wanted to make sure that I touched on this. This schedule was prepared in early February. It was one of the first things I was asked to do when we came on. And as part of your election documents, a mathematical calculation has to be done to show what would be an estimate of the total amount of interest and the tax rate necessary if all of the bonds were issued. So I don't know if many of you have this in front of you, but that's what this was for. This was a mathematical calculation that's necessary, and some of the information in this was necessary for the election documents. Okay? I think many of you have heard, and we've discussed several times. Julie just mentioned it a couple minutes ago. And your engineer just discussed your 10-year CIP, which really only covers less than $16 million in bond issuances. Okay. Speaking about kind of general government, school districts, and cities, it is not uncommon for school districts and cities and counties to have elections for more than their immediate or 10-year capital needs. Basically, bond elections are expensive, and in order to save that cost and try to have a little bit longer term planning, okay? But I would now like to kind of speak a little bit more immediately. Taylor and Jeff just sort of reviewed their expectations for the next 10 years of your capital needs. Certainly predicting what interest rate you may be paying for a 2026 bond issuance or a 2029 bond issuance is not an easy task. It's something I'm asked to do every day. You know, what are interest rates going to do tomorrow? Not an easy question to answer, but I certainly do my best. But really the best information that I can give you is centered around what is closest, which is what we're considering if the election passes in May, 2022 bond issuance, which Taylor covered, $6,710,000. And as Julie mentioned, my calculation, I try to be conservative in my estimates, is that the tax rate necessary for that bond issuance would be only 27.6 cents. So that's, $276 for a $100,000 house. I'm happy to, answer any questions on any of these schedules, get into the weeds. I love to discuss the details and the numbers. So I certainly enjoy doing that.
Yeah, I think we're going to take questions
Yeah.
at the very end.
Yeah. The last thing I would mention, every single one of these bond issuances is going to come in front of your board, and your board is going to review all of the projects that are included. Okay, like Taylor sort of walked through what we refer to as sources and uses. Your board will review the uses and review, do they believe that all these projects need to occur? And then your board is also going to review a financial capacity analysis prepared by me in each case. So even after the 2022 bond issuance, we're going to go through the same process the next time the bonds are issued, maybe in 2026. All of the assumptions will have changed by then, right? It'll be a different picture. We can project what the tax rate might need to be in 2026 or 2027, but we'll have better information in 2025 or in the beginning of 2026 when we're preparing for that bond issue. And so you are all welcome to all the public meetings, but the point I wanted to make is that your elected board members are going to review every single one of these bond issuances and approve them before the application ever goes to the TCEQ.
Hi, I'm David Bonham. I'm the district's attorney. I just wanted to touch briefly on the process associated with the issuance of bonds, just so everybody really understands all of the regulation and the kind of procedure that's involved. It is not a short process, and as Lauren mentioned, it starts with a conversation with the board. First, the board determines exactly what work needs to be done, and then the bond issue is sized accordingly, right? So the bond authorization, the proposition that is included in the election allows only for the use of those bond proceeds for water, sewer, and drainage improvements in the district, right? This money cannot be used for a stadium. It cannot be used for a theme park. It is to construct water, sewer, and drainage improvements for the benefit of the district, right? So when we start the conversation, first we look to the engineers and to the board to determine what work needs to be done, right? The engineers make recommendations, but ultimately it is up to the determination of the board what the appropriate amount to include is. The financial advisor prepares a feasibility analysis, and we go project by project, right? We talked about some of the work that's been included. We can actually do an analysis and say, okay, it cost $150,000 to fix this ditch, right? What is the tax rate impact of fixing that ditch on the community? And the board, in each case, will make a determination as to what should be included in that application. So once the application has been authorized and submitted to the TCQ, the preparation, I will tell you, bond applications are fairly significant documents that generally take a couple months to prepare. They are submitted to the TCQ. If they are submitted in an expedited form, we expect to have about a 3-month review process at the TCQ, and then there is about a 3-month process associated with the issuance of bonds. And that includes preparing and distributing offering documents, the actual sale of the bonds themselves, and approval by the Attorney General's office. So The district cannot sell bonds without the approval of both the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and the Attorney General's office. So we have a 2022 schedule that is put together based on the assumption that there would be a successful bond election here in May. But were the election not successful, obviously we would have to revise that schedule and then the corresponding construction timelines. I will just, I'll also add that remember that this is the timeline to have cash in hand to do the project, right? This is not the timeline to actually complete these projects. There are a number of requirements associated with large projects like this or using governmental funds. We have to receive public bids. We have to ensure that we have a qualified contractor, and these projects take some time. So when we talk, I just want to make sure everyone understands that when we talk about a 2022 bond issuance, that there is additional construction time that would be associated with the individual projects. So I think you are. Want to make a few comments as well?
Okay, so my first question, well, first of all, what I'd like to say is that I'd support Prop B 100%. No question about that. As far as Prop A goes, I do think we need a bond. We need some work done. However, I think that $25 million is a lot of money. I think it's more than what we need. And what I would like to do is approach that first from, how you arrived at the $25 million. And I think that you touched on that with the process just a minute ago. And I have some dates, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But on January 7th, we had a number of presentations by engineering firms presented to the board as potentials for the new district engineer. On January 11th, the contract was approved for the board. On January 28th, the engineering report was issued, 17 days later. And 4 days after that, on the 4th of February, the board voted for a bond order for $25 million. So in less than a month, the engineering companies recommended $25 million that we move forward with a bond. And we really, in my opinion, didn't get a chance to discuss any options. That was the only option, $25 million. That's it. I did say that in the board meeting, I would support, somewhere around 10 to 15 million, and that's probably where I would be. So it seemed like it was really fast that we processed through that. So what the question I'd like to ask is, have you guys ever gone that fast from 0 to 60? And how long does it typically take the district engineer to assess and present a report along with the capital improvement plan, which I know is a living document? That just seemed really fast. I know in the business I'm in, a lot of businesses that you guys are in, you really want to assess things first and then act. And here, I'm not sure that we had enough time to really do a full assessment. If you look in the 2022 budget, there's a lot of money in there for televising the drainage. We really don't know what it looks like at this point. To my understanding, there hasn't been any televising done other than shooting pictures down the manholes. So I do think we need a good assessment before we act. Don't want to get into a situation where we are doing a ready, then fire, then aim, and having to look back and say, whoops. And I don't think that's where we want to be there. So one other question, I'll hand over the mic to you guys, and then I have some finance questions. But the other question is, I know we need work. There's no question, guys. We need work. We need some money. I don't think just with moderate increases in rates we would be able to fix things. I think we probably need a combination of some money in bonds, plus some rate increases, when you look at those options. But have you identified any real issues that you think are going to be catastrophic failures, you know, in the next 18 months? I mean, really, let's not have any fear and uncertainty and doubt in order to inflate the numbers. Really, have you identified anything that's catastrophic at this point?
All right, I'm going to take the questions. I think as you ask them, if I miss one, just holler at me and I'll pick it up. You're right, we did go fast. Didn't have a choice. And the dates you had for when you interviewed the 4 engineering firms and when you selected us, those are accurate. When we got word that we thought we'd be selected, we started on this bond authorization report before we were actually hired, because you're under such a tight schedule. Davis can probably add in the dates, but the election had to be called by a certain date, and the report had to be completed before the election could be called. So, yes, we did move fast. I will tell you that I moved faster on some districts than that. If we had done previous authorization reports, or we had a good shell to start with, and we knew the district, it could actually be done a little quicker. The projects that were included came from inspections that Taylor made with, at least I think a couple of directors were with him. They went out, he identified some potential problems, not specific projects, but you look at one of the plants and you see that the electrical controls are outdated, working, but they're outdated. And the problem with controls is at some point they stop making parts for them and you can't continue to work on them. So, we're able to identify 3 water plants. Do we know there's going to be projects to be done on those? You have a wastewater plant. You know there's going to be projects there in the next how many years. We knew the drainage issues that you had. We knew the sanitary sewer backups and issues that you had there. So that $25 million is a very generic number, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. Part of it is you look at it and you say water plant number 1, okay, over the next, and we now know that it may be taken out of service, but we look at all 3 water plants. Say water plant number 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's just say over the next 25 years, we could probably expect to spend $1 million potentially on each one of them if you had to put a well in or you had tanks to be replaced. So you start generating a list of projects just from those plants. Wastewater plant, we have so many $1 million over the next 30 years that we have to put on it. Drainage, you come up with some estimates. You just generally put together a good best estimate of what you may need during the duration, of these potential bond sales. So that's where the $25 million comes from. It was not project specific. It's the, I hate to say best guess, but let's just say best educated guess you can be made on what your needs are going to be. And we do these. I've probably done a dozen of these bond authorization reports in my career. All districts don't have them. When a district is created, there's a certain number of bonds authorized at that point. A lot of districts never have to go back for a second bite of the apple. They had enough authorized in the beginning. In your case, your bonds were either sold or had been canceled and they're no longer available to you. So that's sort of the schedule. Yes, we move fast. It's a standard form, so you're not recreating the wheel every time. You just have to look at the districts, the potential projects, the type of facilities that you have, and come up with the best engineering estimate that you can at that time. So you talked about the 10-year CIP, and I'll just jump in here and you can take the mic if you need it. I guess you spent, about a month or so going through and looking at it. And keep in mind, the projects that were found there, every time Taylor's been in the field with Richard or directors or I've been there, you're constantly seeing things that are going to have to be replaced and making notes about what those projects are. So the 10-year CIP plan itself might have been prepared after it was authorized, but the basis for it, that information was being gathered from day one. You asked about the normal time to put together both an authorization report and a CIP plan. The authorization report, like I said, happens pretty quick. I've never spent more than a month putting one together. As far as the CIP, that is a living document, as has been said before. We have the list today, when we prioritize it as we think it will be done, but if something breaks tomorrow, it moves up the list. You know, and when you're dealing with water and wastewater and drainage, things can change on a daily basis depending on electrical strike could knock things out, your screen could go out at the wastewater plant. There's just always things that happen. And, you know, keep in mind the wastewater plant, it's pretty corrosive material it's dealing with, and metal will rust and pumps will go out.
I think you had one question about the catastrophic failure and what we predicted for something like that. You know, Jeff alluded to an electrical strike at the wastewater plant that knocks out that entire motor control center. You're looking at replacing the whole control center. There's not a piecemeal that you're going to piecemeal it back together with for something that's going to be reliable for Richard and his team to use, that's also safe. Yes, another thing to touch on is on Plantation Creek. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but right next to the driving range up there towards the top where that pipeline crosses, there's some major failures right there. There's a lot of water coming through. All it's going to take is a 2 to 3 inch rainstorm that comes in there, removes the right amount of soil, and all of a sudden you have large pieces of concrete debris. And it just is going to continue to take out bridge after bridge after bridge as it gets pushed down that waterway. So as far as catastrophic failures, it's really in your drainage system. Obviously, you've had some sanitary sewer backups. It's never a good thing to see, and there's definitely some issues there. But also look at Mosswood. That concrete line channel, I'll be honest, I talked to Richard, he didn't know it was concrete lined. It's been that way since the 70s from my understanding. It's overgrown, it's cracking right at the ridge, right at the back of those people's lots. And if you get the wrong rainstorm, the wrong amount of flow coming through there, it's going to start washing out people's backyards, and it's just going to continue to wash away. So that's what I would touch base on, as catastrophic failures that we would perceive as very possible.
Thank you. So, I mean, yeah, Mother Nature can definitely wreak some havoc, but there's nothing that's failing right now as far as equipment. Well, no, he said that it could take it out, right? So, okay.
Your storm sewer is actively failing.
It is actively
It is actively failing. You're starting to get that many sinkholes within a district. You can say that it's actively failing.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So, the next comment and question that I have is around the amount of the bonds. And so, for the park, this is what I understand, and Lauren, with you and I had a conversation with Davis this morning. So legally, the maximum amount of the bond that can be issued is 1% of the total taxable value of the district. So I think it's around $164 million is the total. And so if you take 1% of that, that's about 16.4 billion.
1% is
1.6 million.
Sorry, 1.6. Yeah, trying to talk and think about numbers. So that is actually, we're over the maximum. And as a rule of thumb, the minimum amount for the bond is 1%. So we're kind of in a gray area on those. I still 100% support Prop B for the park. One other thing I'd like to say is that I understand that park money is for park. Definitely know that. And as I understand, some of that money can be used to acquire the land. So there's over $500,000 that's put in escrow for Charleston during mediation. And that came out of the general operating fund for water, sewer, and drainage. So as I understand it, you correct me if I'm wrong, but that can be moved back. There are stipulations, there are conditions, seller has to agree to it, and things like that. But the money can be returned to WSD general operating fund, and park bond money could then replace that. And it's also been mentioned too that it's possible for legal fees, all the legal fees that we've had to pay as a district related to the acquisition of that land could also be returned to the general operating fund. water, sewer, and drainage. So that's, you know, something that can get us, I don't know, 500, 800,000, maybe more. But